All right, and there we go. We are live. It's time for another episode of Interview with the Artist. And joining me this time is Mr. Chris Suhre. How you doing, buddy?
Great, how are you guys?
I am fantastic. I am going to just change the name of this real quick because, as usual, my stream is ridiculous and somehow always uses whatever the name is of the last stream that I did. I cannot explain why that is. Technology is forever my bane, and here we
Your
are.
Yeah, yours and mine. I mean, technology and I don't get along anymore. There was one time when we did, but not anymore.
Yeah, I think the last piece of technology I had that I really felt like I truly understood was when I bought my Sega Genesis. That was it. That was the end
Yeah,
of the road for me.
that's about right. Yeah.
I'm just an old man here living in a world that is slowly passing me by, and that's fine. But
Oh, you're yeah, you're telling me. My oldest is a junior in high school now, and so it feels like yeah, the world is just passing by now.
but that's all right because
Yeah.
thankfully, Chris, we have a hobby that is still wonderfully, beautifully not digital, not manual, as old as time itself, as long uh as pigments have existed, right? We can paint it up. We're tracing our roots back to those who to like the artists that painted the statues of ancient Egypt and Rome. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, let's build this
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
So
We're back
Chris,
with the old masters.
there you go. Yes. Chris is a miniature painter that is an absolute idol of mine. When I say miniature artist, that is absolutely the word I would use to describe Chris. He has created absolutely breathtakingly, staggeringly gorgeous pieces, some of which we're going to look at today. Things that have blown me away since I first became aware of your work many years ago. You've been an idol of mine for a long, long time. And I'm so excited to sit down and chat with you, buddy.
I, I'm I'm honored that you wanted me on, and you're making me blush.
Your work absolutely demands all of that and much more. For those of you who know Chris, I hope you've seen his work. If you followed Crystal Brush, then certainly you're familiar with it, as he's taken home many of those. But there's been a great deal of other work you've done as well, and we're going to look through all that. But let's get right into it. So where I want
Okay.
to start is is with the question we kind of always start this out with, which is
Uh-huh.
just how did you get into miniature painting? What was the thing that made you go, you know what I want to do? I want to paint tiny plastic people. Where did that come from for you?
Um. I mean, I think a lot of us get into it because we had like mini tabletop games that we played and stuff like that, and we just it kind of became that progression. Mine might be a little bit different in that I mean, I was not a Warhammer. I was not a 40K guy. I was a Warmachine guy. Like when Privateer Press first put out their game, within 6 months of that, while I was still in school and everything, a buddy of mine's like, "Hey, we should play this. It's kind of like chess on the table and stuff like that," and just fell in love with the game. I had absolutely no interest whatsoever in painting at that point.
Okay.
I played the game because I wanted to play the little figures and do like the mathematics and try to figure out what are my chances of succeeding at this and like the those type of things. As the game went on, I was like, my stuff on the table looks really boring next to this guy's. I'm gonna paint it, but it was just, I mean, it was like three coats.
Sure.
It was
Sure.
bare minimum type thing and stuff like that. Um, it wasn't until I finished residency and started actually working at my practice that I became actually interested in painting. And the main reason for that was because with my work schedule, I couldn't go play anymore. I
Right.
didn't have the time to go hang out with my buddies and play a 3 or 4 hour game or something like that. But I still wanted to have something with them and do something with them. So I started becoming more and more interested in the painting. And to be quite honest, probably one of the biggest factors was that is the time when Privateer Press started hosting painting competitions.
Okay.
And their painting competitions were broken down into kind of like the Euro system, where you could get a bronze, a silver, or a gold based on how good they felt your work was.
Right. So it's more open system based, right?
It was an open system base, and it was irregardless of how everyone else did. So I actually got a Facebook the other day about the first mini I ever entered in the P3 competition. Was like this Doom Shaper model, and the thing is basically tabletop quality. And I'm pretty sure at that point it was Matt DiPietro even was like looking at it, and he's like, I guess he kind of eked out a bronze on this, and I was like, really, that's great. And then he went through and he kind of walked me through, like, you could do this to get a little bit better and that to get a little bit better and stuff like that. And I don't know, it was just really encouraging. I'm like, hey, maybe I can do this. So then it became the next few years of like, okay, how do I paint my models better? How do I actually kind of go from tabletop to like really, really good tabletop?
Right.
We keep going to P3 competitions, kept getting more and more bronze coins. I mean, I've got a huge stack of bronze coins. I was like, I just want a silver. I just got to earn a silver. And then, like two years or something like that, got my first silver. Like, yeah, okay, I got my silver. So I was like, now I want my gold.
Right.
So I kept working for another year or two, got my gold, And then it was finally like at that point, it's like, I want to win a category. I want to win a skull and crossbones trophy. And then, took that. And then honestly, after that point, it started becoming more about like, this is fun. Competition's cool. It's really great to go meet all these, really interesting people, look at the things they produce. But it started being a lot less about what can you accomplish and more about like, what can I put out there to show someone else? Like, what can I do to tell a story that other people will find interesting?
Right.
And so I think that's kind of where I am now. Like, I mean, I like going to the competitions, but I'm not really interested in going to the competition to see what I can get. I'm more interested to go because I'm going to get to hang out with my friends.
Right.
I'm going to get to see great pieces of art by other miniature artists, and in just knowledge. I mean, most of these events have teachers at them, and so you can go learn new skills and stuff like that. And so it started becoming it's a lot more about that at this point.
Yeah. No, I completely understand what you mean there. Like both in the progression and the want to put something out, because there is that drive, and it's understandable, right? You especially when you're early competing, you're like, you get a medal at some level, you're like, I got to beat myself next year, and that's what I like about the open system, because you don't think about other people. You're not trying to compete against other people. You're thinking about beating yourself, which is why I love that type of system.
Yeah, I mean, early on, I will probably fully admit that there was probably always that sensation like, no, I want to beat so and so, and I want to beat so and so. And one of the best things was I went to, or I was getting ready to go to Warmachine Weekend, which had like a painting competition and stuff like that. But it was very Privateer Press centric and stuff like that.
Right.
And I knew another guy that was a very good miniature painter was going to be going there too, by the name of Dallas Kemp.
Oh yes,
And
Dallas.
And so it actually got to this point before we went that I don't remember if he asked me or I asked him who started it, but it was like, you know what, dude? What if I show you what I'm working on? You tell me what you think so I can get it, to be better. And I'll do the same for you, 100% honesty, not trying to like do anything to, to hurt one another.
Right.
We're just doing to make sure we're doing the best job that we both can.
Yep.
And that was like the realization point of like, hey, this is not about trying to beat someone. This is about making yourself better and producing pretty things to put out there in the world,
Well, exactly. And what you ultimately want, I think, this is certainly I certainly believe this is something that you've sought after and achieved, is you want a piece that's going to be out there that's going to mean something to somebody, right? When they look at it, that they're going to
Yes.
remember it, that they're going to think it's going to trigger some emotion in them, that they're going to think that's really cool. It means something to me, that they like it, that it connects with them in some real way.
Yes.
Not just like, oh, that's well painted, right? Like that's cool,
I
but there's a
I
deeper
couldn't
level.
agree more. There's yes. I mean, I would say that when it comes to like technical skill, there's easily probably hundreds of mini painters that do a better job than I do, maybe even more than that. I mean, when it comes to technical skill, I'm more interested in telling the story, setting the atmosphere, trying to evoke that emotional response.
Right.
Like you said, something people remember. Like I mean, to me, that was one of the great things about Crystal Brush. I mean, it wasn't even so much about, oh, can I go earn a Crystal Brush? It was more like, man, if I can make it to the online voting, literally thousands of people will see this, and it'll give me the opportunity to see, do they have that emotional response? Does it
Yeah.
strike a chord with someone?
Sure. Absolutely. I think of a piece like Last Light, right? So like Roman's piece or what
Yes,
of the
yes,
yes. Like that's one of those pieces that just drips with memory and it's just stunning. Like it's one of those pieces that I looked at years ago and thought to myself, "Oh my God, this is what miniature painting could be." Right?
yes. I
Like
totally agree.
it has so much story and narrative and life captured within it, and it blew me right out of my socks, right? Like right there. And that's the kind of thing uh that I think is hard. You can't create it every time you put,
No,
your brush to a model, but I think you always feel really lucky when you feel like you're working on a piece where that is going to be what you feel like you're doing, right? Where you're going to be
yeah.
able to create something that endures. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's the real point. That's the real goal is I'm usually going for. That's that feeling I want, is to feel like you've created this thing that you have this emotional, almost like like love, like an emotional attachment to it,
Right.
because you've just invested so much and so much feeling into it. And like to me, those always turn out to be the best pieces, you
Yep.
know. Um,
Yeah, I mean, you and I were talking a little bit before the show, and I said, we were talking about like the model you use for competition, and I said the number one piece of feedback I give to people all the time is if you're going to paint something for competition or you want to take it to a display quality or a showcase piece or whatever you want to call it,
mhm.
it has to be something you love because you're going to hit a point in working on that model where you hate it or where you're 100
Yeah,
hours in, where you're having a problem you just can't solve, right? Some color just isn't sitting right in your head or whatever, right? There's 1,000 weird problems you can run into with these pieces. And if you don't love it, you won't power through, right? You won't do
you
the
are
work, you won't
yes,
put in the effort.
yeah. Um, Are you familiar with 2K, the miniature artist by any chance?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so yeah, definitely check out his stuff, Vince. At some point, he's European. He was at Paintapalooza with like Matt and Ben and stuff like
Okay.
that. Um, I totally admire Two's work. And he gave a podcast interview with them. And one of his big things was like, people were like, you produce things that no one else thinks of, no one else comes up with. They're very unique and stuff like that. And the thing that blew me away when he was like talking about his pieces, he's like, yeah, he's like, I might have, I don't know, 5, 6 pieces or something like that. One I'll fall in love with, and that thing will get completed, and it'll be this really unique piece. But the other 5, I'll do X amount on them, and I'll be like, I don't love you, and then that's just the end of it. He puts it to the side, and it's never touched again. And I
Wow.
just right, and so
Wow.
like, he'll be like he literally would say that like once the piece serves its purpose for him,
Mm-hmm.
it's just done. So that means like, if he invested a good chunk of time into a piece, but he painted it to what he thought was all it was worth, and he's like, I just don't care for it anymore. That was it. It was done. And I just find that I kind of agree with them. I mean, like,
Sure.
I mean, I never throw a piece away or anything like
Sure,
that.
sure. I've
Yeah,
never not
but
just like finished something, but that is amazing.
yeah, there's times I'm just like, yeah, no, I guess this is just done for now. I'll put it in the case, and maybe someday I'll pick it back up again. But if it just sits there forever, no, that's okay.
That's such a like Cezanne attitude, right? Where you're just doing like all he wanted to sketch was the ear of his wife. And once he got done with the
Yes.
ear, he would have like part of the rest of her face and be like, "Yep, that's done. I got what I wanted out of this," and just that's it.
Yeah.
Just he would set the sketch to the side, right?
Yeah.
And like that's such an amazing attitude to me to be able to. But I get it. Like it's so funny because there's probably a lot of behavioral economics in that. Like um, Steve Levitt, for the guy who wrote Freakonomics, talked about how like one of the keys to success is quit early and often, right?
Uh-huh.
Like only do the things you love, and when you're finding you're not loving something, if it's not essential, just stop doing it, right? Like some things you don't love and they're essential, like you gotta go to the dentist or
Yeah.
whatever, right? But um,
Right. Some you got to do.
right,
But yeah, I mean, especially with this being art in that, I mean, I feel like your feelings come through on your piece, you
yeah.
know? I mean, and yeah, if you don't love it, it just doesn't quite ever live up to what you thought it would be then. So,
No,
but
that's amazing. You mentioned the Warmachine Weekend. That's still happening,
yeah.
right? There's something new going on with that.
Yeah, yeah, they changed. It's in St. Louis every year. It's been changed. The name's been changed to Warfare Weekend now. It's WARFAIRE, I believe.
Like a
Um,
fair.
yeah, like a fire. Um, and you know, it's a gaming convention. I mean, they're going to have like War Machine and Hordes there. They're going to have. I think they've got like X-wing. Let's hear. They've got you know, various games like that. I know, for instance, like Creature Cast, stuff like that. And so in the past, they've always had a painting competition. They've always had instructors come and teach, but this year they're trying to up that game, and they're actually kind of switching over to having, like, it's not to sound bad, but a real painting competition. Like they're going to have not only just, you know, gaming miniatures, but they want artistic miniatures. They want
Right.
like 75 millimeter ones, bust, dioramas, all that type of stuff. Um, and you're going to have the opportunity to take classes with some artists and stuff like that there. They asked me to teach a couple of classes, so I'm going to teach a couple there. But you also got artists like Lynn Stahl is going to be there, Kevin Fannin, and then like Yeji. I mean, they're going to be there too, teaching classes.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, yeah. So I mean, you know, and it's not an overly expensive con or anything like that. And you know, hey, if you want to come to it, we can hang out, and I'll be happy to show people around. We got a great barbecue in St. Louis, so there's like Sugar Fire. It's a fantastic place to eat, and we got a pretty good art museum too. So
Nice. I will post the link down that. That's amazing. Like
I
everybody you
appreciate it.
named
Thank you.
there is fantastic. And let me just say this in
Yeah.
advance. I know you teach around at several of the conventions, and like, just this is my personal statement to the audience. If you ever get a chance to take one of Chris's classes, you should absolutely be doing it. If what we're about to show you here in a few minutes doesn't convince you of that, I don't know what will. But Chris, you are a great teacher beyond just being a great artist. Like the way you communicate in your class is really good. So I think people would be very well served to take one of your classes. So if you ever get a chance, do so, folks. It's a good chance. So that could be a great weekend to do so.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I'll be teaching at Warfare Weekend, and I know that they're starting to get ready for the Adepticon stuff, and it sounds like I'm going to get asked to return and teach there again. So hopefully I'll be teaching there again this year.
I hope so. It's getting bigger. I know they said this year they're focusing more um on having a lot of classes. So I think that's going to be
Yeah,
great. I think
I
that's going
think
to
it
be
is
really
too.
positive. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what they come up with. I mean, it's a little sad that Crystal Brush left Adepticon. It's leaving a little bit of a void in what I would say is the U.S. miniature painting arena. But it just means there's new opportunities too, right?
That's right.
So now we're gonna. I mean, we've got Golden Demon back. I mean, that's nothing. That's something I never had a chance to compete in. You know, it was gone before I was really. It was even on my radar and stuff like that. So I'm kind of excited to get there and go see what that's. I mean, it's like it's like a rite of passage for a lot of miniature painters,
Oh,
right?
absolutely, man. Let me tell you what, like
Yeah.
Golden Demon, I cannot explain how excited I am that it's coming back to the States. I never got a chance to compete in the States.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so there's a lot of artists who did. It just wasn't a thing that was on my radar at that time. Because it went away in like basically 2013.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's not, yeah.
so all of my Golden Demon time has been me going over to the UK to
Uh-huh.
compete over there. And it's been so much fun. I've really loved it. I know you're working on some awesome stuff you've been sharing online for Golden Demon, and I tell you this, I think I've mentioned it now on so many of these shows, but I'm going to mention it again. This Golden Demon is going to be just
Oh,
amazing.
it's,
It's
yeah, I mean,
ridiculous.
yeah, I listen to your the interviews you do with the artists because it's always, I mean, honestly, the people you've had on so far and everything, they're great artists, and they're friends and stuff like that. So I'm always kind of curious as to what their views and stuff like that. But when you had Caleb on, I know he was talking about like the old guard returning to do Golden Demon. I'm like, I never got to see what the old guard did. I'm kind of
Right.
interested in seeing what
Right?
happens. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so excited. Like, I know I'm just gonna walk through the by the case just heartbroken. And this is my general sense at big competitions like that because I never love my own work, but I always look at other people's work and I'm just like, oh my God, that's stunning,
Yeah.
that's stunning, that's stunning.
I
Just like I'm just it is a heartbreaking sense of overwhelming amazement I have every time I'm at one of these big competitions because I'm blown away by all the artists in this community. And this is going to be one of those things that just brings everybody out, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's really kind of the appeal to me right now. Is you're right. It's going to bring out. I mean, I'm hoping it brings back some of our European friends and stuff like that. But it's also going to bring out these American, North American, like not only just, I don't mean even just necessarily US, but I mean like, North American,
Right.
miniature painters and stuff like that, are going to come out for it that, quite frankly, I've never had the opportunity to see their work in person. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
And, I'm, quite honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to, you and I talk like in messages and stuff like that. And you've been a great help in, kind of putting my mind at ease about Golden Demon and kind of, what should I be expecting and stuff like that. But like, part of me is interested to take something there that's mine and be like, okay, this is what I do. Like
Right.
it's not, it's maybe not the same thing as some other people do, but this is what I do. So
Yeah, it's going to be a real celebration because it's just going to be a bunch of people just like I really this is my prediction for Golden Demon 2020 to Adepticon. My hand is going to hurt from high-fiving everybody for all the amazing pieces that they've brought. You know what I mean? Like that's
right.
a world I want to live in.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can avoid getting like the worst convention flu ever this year. Last year I
Oh
was
my
like
goodness.
almost dead the whole time, but this year I'm sure it'll be
Yeah.
different.
No, oh, I know what you mean. Like the 2019 Crystal Brusher and that. I get there on Friday, turn in my pieces, all that type of stuff. I'm like, okay, yeah, yeah. I start hanging out, and stuff like that. And it's like later Friday night, and we're drinking, and I'm hanging out with Ricardo and Francesco, and I'm like, oh my god, I do not feel good. I feel really, really bad. Ended up going back to the hotel vomiting, all that type of stuff, like all night long. And I'm like, son of a, I've got to teach class tomorrow. I don't even know if I can get out of bed. And then woke up and my buddy Stu took me downstairs, got me some breakfast. I'm like, okay, I got some fluid in me. Maybe I can do this. And by the time class time rolled around, I was like, okay, I'm feeling good. Yeah.
Nice.
But
Bounce
yeah,
back quick.
yeah, it
Good
was
for
like
you.
12-hour bounce back.
It was not so fast for me. It was like maybe Wednesday after the convention before I was like mobile. But that's all right. It was a
Yeah.
good
I mean,
time.
con crud is a thing.
It is a
Yeah. Con
thing.
crud is a real thing.
It hit me right away too. I had one good day, but anyways, that's all right. All right, so I want to go ahead and move to some of your pieces here, man. Let's take
Okay.
a look at some of your work because we got a lot of great stuff. So I'm going to bring that up on the screen here. You won't be able to see it, but the audience will. So I'm going to make it big here. Let's see if I can make it. Is it going to go? Let me go bigger. Let's see if that is. I don't want to block it at all. All right. Sorry, folks, while I resize here. There we go. That'll work. All right. So we start with this. So this is. I want to set the stage here real quick and say that for Crystal Brush this last year, you did 3 pieces. I would call them a cycle, right? Like a traditional sort of cycle, as we would think.
Yeah.
And you had sort of a weaved narrative through all 3, and I probably don't have them in the right order, so I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Um,
We'll go through it right.
and
Actually, I think you do have them in the right order.
okay, great.
Yep.
So all of them with a connected narrative, all of them absolutely stunning. So and actually, let's do this because I think I have the more zoomed in piece here first. So here you
Okay.
go. I have the star. I clicked over to like the zoomed out one, so people can see like the
Okay.
amazing box it's set in, the design you did around the edge of the box. So the Fates is the first piece. So take us through the Fates here.
Okay. Okay. So the fates. Okay. So we were talking earlier. You got to kind of love what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what 2018 Christmas, my wife got me a book on Norse mythology, illustrated by Johann Ergerkens. I'm sure I'm getting his last name incorrect, but Johann's actually a miniature painter.
Okay.
But his real job is like his day job is he does illustration for books, and I just love his style. So I got this Norse mythology book, and I fell in love with it. I was immediately just like, I love the stories of Norse mythology. I love the fact that like these gods are totally flawed, and all these like just unique things with them. And the one thing that kind of caught my eye more than anything was in Norse mythology. There's this idea of fate, and fate binds everything. Even the gods are bound by fate. They
Right.
can't escape it. I mean, why does Odin have those ravens and he tries to gain all this knowledge? Because he's trying to dodge what he knows is fate. He knows he's going to die in Ragnarok, but he wants to do everything he can to avoid it. So I became really interested in the fates, started investigating them, kind of learning about them, learned that they live in the tree Yggdrasil, that they're responsible for basically taking care of it, that they water it, that the tree itself has this dragon called Nidhogg that like goes underneath the roots and slowly eats the tree and destroys it. And that the fates literally kind of they actually refer it as scoring, like they would do it on wood, but people are more used to seeing the thread type
Right.
mentality. So like this idea of weaving threads and weaving the fates of people. Along the same time, I was looking at old works of Ben Comets and Roman from Massive Voodoo. Roman had recently completed that Tarzan piece.
Yep.
That it's Tarzan. It almost looks like it hangs on the wall, like it's this box of jungle type thing. And Ben had done this piece like a year or two earlier of like some space wolves, and it was framed in this scene and everything like that. And I was like, I really want to try doing that style. Maybe I can meld the two together.
Yep.
And so that's kind of where the idea came from. So I ended up like the build and everything like that. I ended up like taking driftwood, breaking the driftwood, cutting it in different sections, molding it to be kind of how I wanted the tree. I would use green stuff and rods to kind of secure it, and then sculpt any gaps that occurred. I would kind of fill those in with either clay or green stuff and kind of sculpt it all together. And then located the figures that I wanted to use. I needed 3 women that looked like they could all be related, but not necessarily the same. So I found Morgana Le Fay, and ended up converting her in 3 different forms. They give us the older hag type looking one, the middle aged, and then the younger one. I got the dragon from GW, the Bee Nidhogg. And then when I was designing like the frame of that, you might notice like up in the one corner there's that squirrel, and that squirrel's called Ratatusk, and he's the squirrel that lives in Yggdrasil, and he runs between the top of the tree where the eagle lives and
Yep.
the bottom of the tree where Nidhogg lives, exchanging insults between the two of them. So I put him up in the corner as like a little piece for that and stuff, like little nod. I love telling stories with my pieces, and I love hiding things in my pieces because I feel like it's fun for the viewer Like, I mean, if someone's going to take the time and just like stare at it for like 20 minutes, I want them to have like little tidbits that
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
other people don't get, you know?
Stuff to
So like,
discover.
you know, yeah, yeah. So that's why like, you know, why I put Ratatouille in there and stuff like that. Or, you know, as people kind of look around the piece, there's actually literally like little holes and stuff like that in the piece, like little caves in the tree, and there's like, you know, piles of skulls in there and stuff like that. Because Yggdrasil, um, the unworthy, so not necessarily bad people, but like the unworthy, when they die, basically their bodies fall at the bottom of Yggdrasil. So that's why there's these piles of bones and stuff like that. Um, and then the story I was trying to tell with it is, so you have these three fates and they're weaving this fate, and then or this person's fate. This is like the start of the story, and you might notice there's a skeleton on there with a sword through it, and that skeleton has a shield with a certain emblem on it. So the thought process I had was, the three fates here are weaving the fate of a child, the child of this guy that died of obviously somehow dishonorable death because he's laying at the bottom of Yggdrasil. And then that kind of moves us over to the next piece then, which is the Valkyrie.
Yep.
Um,
So let's talk about the Valkyrie, which
okay.
is I really think this is like, look, I'll tell you right now, this is my personal favorite of the three.
Oh, thanks.
You know, I was looking at like you know the little bits of this thing you shared before. I mean, I was just like, yes, I was licking my lips in anticipation of this thing. This is my speed, brother, right here. Yeah, she's
I
gorgeous.
Yeah, I've definitely got a thing for like angels and Valkyries. I
Exactly.
just I love that kind of ideology and stuff like that.
Oh, quick question, by the
Um,
way. Somebody had
yeah,
asked,
go ahead.
how tall was the Fates piece? How tall did that actually sit in the box?
I think I'm just under 15 inches. Whatever the maximum height was
Okay,
for competition, I am literally like 2-3 millimeters underneath it.
gotcha. All right.
It was as close as could be, and that ended up in the long run being a bit of a problem. It was my first time ever trying to do something like this: build pieces within boxes, build multiple pieces, you know, together in a series and everything. If I had it to do over again, I would have definitely built them on plinths that all connected together, something like that. I think it
Sure.
would have given it a little bit more of a refined look. So, but anyway, yeah. So moving on to the Valkyrie. So, ironically, that Valkyrie, that's Adriel from Beyond Miniatures.
Okay.
It's a very just kind of typical angel looking like piece and everything like that. And so I actually got that for Christmas the same time I got that Norse mythology book,
Nice.
and I literally started ripping her apart and converting her into a Valkyrie before like January of that year. It was something like competition. It was before the 2018 Crystal Brush competition. I was already tearing her apart and building her into a Valkyrie, and I had no idea what she was ever going to really become. I just knew I wanted to do a Valkyrie.
So did you add
Um,
the extra wings to her head?
I did, yeah. It's
Okay.
actually a bit. It's a bit from a Privateer Press model.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. I took those. The skirt she's got comes with her, but I added like the fur trim to it.
Gotcha.
And then I switched out. She comes with a sword, and I switched that out to be a spear because spear is considered more Norse.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, spears are associated with Odin, so and because in the piece then too, it's real nice because it gives you a nice pointing
Yes.
type like composition. So, um,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
then
she has like a really strong line. Like our viewers will
yes,
see it between like between the feather on the left side of her head and
uh,
the spear tip, there's a wonderful straight line. But then also on the other side, you have this great triangle, you know, and
yeah,
and by the way, if I can spruik something of yours real quick, you did a great
sure,
article in the Illustrated Fantasy Artist, right? Is where you put it out there about
yes,
your about composition. And
yeah,
so just a quick spruik for that, since I published a piece in there last month. Chris's piece is awesome. Illustrated Fantasy Artist is run by a guy named Jay Martin, who I hope to have on the show sometime as well. If you want to see, like, Chris is really a master of composition, and you'll see it throughout these pieces. But he really breaks down his theory in an incredibly grokkable fashion in that article. So just check that out.
thanks,
I'll throw the link down below so
yeah.
people can check it out.
Oh, thanks, yeah, I appreciate that. Um, Yeah, I mean, so even if you don't mind me going on a quick tangent, I'll
Nope.
tell you the composition in
This
the
show
in the
is all
Valkyrie.
about tangents, my friend. This show might as well have been
Valkyrie.
called Tangents with the Artist. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so when you look at the model, the Adriel herself, she is basically, if you break her down to her basic form, she's a cross, right? I mean, she's
Yep.
got these big wings that go off to the side, and then her body is pretty much just, straight up and down. So it kind of forms like a cross. So crosses are important because wherever the two lines meet is the maximum point of focus.
Yep.
Okay. So in this case, that tends to be her head and chest type area. So when I designed the frame to go around that piece, I reinforced that idea. So like if you look at the frame for that piece, at the very top of it is the two ravens, Hunan and Munin, which are Odin's ravens. They fly around the world gathering information for him and stuff like that. And they tend to go to battlefields to see what's going on and stuff like that. So that's kind of the tie-in there. So that is directly above her. The hill is directly below her and has the most like weight in the scene. So that draws a straight line down right through her. And then on either side of the wing is where the secondary like icons of the ravens go. So once again, she's a cross, and then there's a giant cross drawn with the frame. So it makes everyone look right at her. On top of that, to even make you look more at her, the lightest part of the whole entire scene is the background behind her. It looks so it kind of looks like it's glowing. All these things are designed to make you look at her and not
Right.
necessarily look everywhere else. You look everywhere else afterwards, but that's the maximum point of focus.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or yeah, and like with the with like the fate piece, it's got composition in it too. Like it's got what's called grid composition, where you break the thing down into 9 segments. And grid composition is really good for like multiple figures because it lets you put them at certain spots where people tend to look, but it doesn't make one dominate over another. So that tends to work well when you have multiple things. So, but yeah, so like anyway, yeah, so I was actually building her and painting her before any of this really came to any thought in my head. Like, I mean, it was just like, oh, this is a cool angel piece. I'm just going to paint this and that. And like we were saying earlier, sometimes you're just done with something. And I painted her for a while. And then I was kind of like, okay, I think you and I are done for now. And she just kind of went by the wayside. And then I started working on the fates and becoming really back into the Norse mythology. And it's like, it's time to pick her up and we're going to
Right.
put her into this whole entire idea. So her story is that you see that shield at the bottom that's broken and everything. The way I pictured this is that child that the fates, were drawing out her lifelines and all that type of stuff. That child grew up and became a warrior, and it had the same shield as her father, but her father was dishonored, so she's trying to, earn honor back for the family and stuff like that. Well, the Valkyries only come and collect the best warriors, the honorable warriors, to go fight in Valhalla for Odin. And so that's why the Valkyrie is there. She's come to this battlefield, where all this carnage has gone on, and she's collecting that person to go to Valhalla. Because in Norse mythology, most of the time it was men that went to Valhalla, but there were women, there were shield maidens and stuff like that that were honored and went to Valhalla yet.
Absolutely. All right. And that brings us to, of course, the third piece.
Yeah. So the idea for this piece was so what I wanted to do for Crystal Brush is I wanted to try to tell a story over multiple pieces. I wanted them all to be linked, and because you can't enter more than one piece per category, I was like, well, I've already done my diorama. I've got my large figure, so I have to do something else if I want to put a third piece in. And so I was like, okay, we're going to go with the bust. And I don't know who the artist is, but a 2D artist I saw on the internet one time was taking these pictures of like fallen warriors, of like Norse Vikings and stuff like that who had died in battle, and they were laying them in their graves or in their boat. And it's like, that is a phenomenal idea, and I've always wanted to paint that bust of Peppa's, the lady in the lake.
Yep.
Or yeah, what's it? Vivian, that's what they call her. But yeah, it's Lady in the Lake. And I was like, if I take her and I build a boat around her, it can look like we're sending her off to Valhalla. So that's where that idea came from. Um, So I had the painter, that was a fun piece. There's definitely a lot of things in retrospect I do different with it now. But I thought it was kind of like it was unique. It was something that I'd never seen anyone else do before, and I was like, I really want to try this. Um, as far as like composition and that goes on her, up in the one corner on the right, like her on the right hand corner of it
Yep.
is the raven again. So the ravens just kind of represent, and that helps tie it back into the Valkyrie piece, right? Because
Right.
that's got all the ravens. And then at the bottom left hand corner is this is Yggdrasil, so that helps tie it back into the Fate piece. The other fun part of that composition, though, is if you draw a line between those two corners, it goes like right over her. So it puts the focus back on her face, helping reinforce that for me. On top of that, too, the benefit of having diagonal lines in your pieces when you do it like that, diagonal lines automatically create this sense of movement,
Right.
which helps reinforce this idea that she's in waves. It
Yep.
helps kind of sell this idea of the water almost like moving around her. And then finally, too, the boat itself is like a composition piece because it frames her. So once again, it just puts all this focus on her. Um, and then like as I did that piece and everything, my buddy, buddy Eric Swinson had commented about like you could put this like light in the bottom, like or like this idea of like OSL coming up, like the boat had been lit on fire, and so he helped me kind of develop that idea, which I think is fantastic. It just adds this additional feel to her. So
Well, and I would also, it's another movement point, right? Because your eye will
yes,
get
yeah,
pushed up by the heat of the flames. Like that's what we tend to do. Like when we see the flames, we tend to look up them because that's the way the color transition works, right?
right,
And it's pushing you out of that into her face where you've got the extreme cold light of the moonlight, right?
yeah,
Lighting it. So it's yet
yeah,
another movement piece pushing you toward the center. And of
yeah.
course, then the tie
So
in with the shield, right? To make you see that
oh yes,
the
I
connection.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. And then the shield is the same shield as it's been in the other pieces to help try to tie that connection. Um, a quick another tangent since this is a show of tangents.
Yeah, sure.
Um, for anyone that's like kind of listening or ends up watching this stuff like this, they're probably familiar with like Banshee and how Banshee often uses the phrase, if you don't mind me saying, like uses the phrase like like fuck smoothness and stuff like that.
Sure.
He'll also tell you to be fearless, and he's absolutely right. Like it is on that piece in particular, I it sounds kind of dumb, but I literally had to go in and scrape her eyes because the way the eye was designed, there's the lids on it or whatever. I had to eliminate the lids and make it look like her eyes were closed, and that was so intimidating. Scraping this bust and being like, literally, everyone's going to look at this spot, and if I don't get this right, it's going to show so much.
Yeah. But it came out. I mean, you nailed it. It's
It did,
great. And it
yeah,
is a good line. Like you've got to, in the end, can't let fear get you, right? You're
yeah,
absolutely right.
yeah. We have a piece coming up in a little bit. I will tell you the story of fear with it and how it basically eliminated this whole entire idea of fear in miniature painting for me.
Oh, awesome. So this was an absolutely gorgeous cycle. I really loved this. I mean, this is like I said, this is a just a stunning set of artistic pieces from beginning to end. The narrative was just wonderfully woven through them. I loved it. I loved the you've got a great use of color throughout that ties it all together, but yet each piece feels distinct and its own. It's also each is speaking with its own voice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really a triumph, man. I dig the heck out of it so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right. So next up, we have our pirate captain for a big change of pace.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's got the like undead orc pirate captain. Oh boy.
yeah. I love
Oops, sorry.
I love Big Child Creative miniatures. They do a fantastic job on their stuff. And this was I took this to my first crystal brush, and I literally remember picking up this piece and looking at it and being like, okay, this is really, really cool. I really want to do a good job on it. There's this guy, Sergio, who's a fantastic artist. Everyone really pretty much knows about him. And I was just kind of learning about him at that point. It's like, I want to learn how he did what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I studied his box art, and tried to replicate it as much as I could on that piece, to try to like try to just figure out what he did and stuff like that. So to me, it's one of my. I mean, it's one of these pieces I took at the competition. It never won a single thing, but I absolutely love it,
Right.
and because it has this like connection for me, like this it was this like aha moment. How did he figure this out? What is this supposed to look like? Um, I remember like one of the greatest things I learned with it was like things don't really have to be the color you think they are. Like for instance,
Yep.
does not need he's really great at that, at adding in all these other colors. So it was kind of like a liberating piece for me. That's why I like it.
No, absolutely. You kind of cut out there, but I'll say what I
Oh, sorry.
think you're okay. You just kind of you went wonky for a second. Internet, it happens. Uh, I assume you were mentioning the blue and like the way you worked that in around the piece because like that's one of the first things I was going to comment on is what I love about this is how you've hid the blue is obviously very eye catching, right? Because it's this sort of
Uh-huh.
bright skyish blue, and you hit it on the edges of the hilt. On the main sword, it's a big piece, but that's the way it's angled. Then the eyes, the teeth, and then the gun barrel. Inside the gun barrel is the
Yeah.
genius move to me because
I
that
can't,
would be so easy to just be black, right?
yeah.
To just be dark.
I can't take credit for that. That was Sergio. That he had that done in his, and I was like, I love that idea. I'm stealing it.
Yeah.
So
It's a great example. Oftentimes I'll see people with pieces and they'll be, kind of off color balanced and they my comment will be it needs to be you need more color here or there. Kind of spread around. You don't have enough of this very bright color on, and it's drawing the eye in a sort of unfortunate way. And when the question I get back is, well, where can I add it? And I'm like, anywhere you want. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
just
You
the
don't
sky's the limit.
right. You don't have to be like, trees are brown with green leaves, or leather is always brown. You can make it whatever you want.
Right.
Change it and create this atmosphere. I mean, yeah. Don't feel limited.
Especially with
That.
stuff like that. You think about things like
Yeah.
leather and like wood. It's the texture that makes it those things as much as it's the
Yes.
color, right?
Yeah.
So if the texture looks right, like your leather in this is so dark brown black as to be
Yeah.
just like so muted, right? But we still recognize it as leather because you've worked in all the leather texture, right? Of this very aged leather, this underwater stuff. Sorry.
Right. No, you're absolutely metal. What's the key characteristic of metal? How it reflects light, right?
Right.
That's what sells it as metal, not the fact that it looks gray or blue or whatever. It can look purple and still be metal.
Yep.
It just has to have those characteristics.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, this guy's cool. I remember seeing him in the
Thanks.
case the first year that you were there. I loved it. All right, now, oh boy, oh boy,
Small.
Smaug. Yeah,
Yeah.
the big dragon.
So yeah, so this was the second dragon I did. Um and I love The Hobbit. Like, I mean, it's one of my favorite books. I do not love the Peter Jackson Hobbit movie. That was
No,
crap.
it is
But
unfortunate that that's the.
it is
But
unfortunate.
we will always have the Rankin and Bass Hobbit, so that's okay.
Yeah. But like I used to watch like the Hobbit cartoon, like the
Yes.
old Hobbit cartoon. And I just enjoyed watching that so much as a kid. So when I saw that dragon from Nocturna, I was like, yeah, I really want to paint that up. And as I started working on him, I was like, he kind of feels like Smog to me. And so I wanted to recreate that scene with him like in the dwarven lair and stuff like that. Um, there's definitely things I do different with that piece. One of the things, such a stupid idea. I was like, okay, I'm gonna paint these coins, and I'm gonna paint them all like non-metal metallic. That was so dumb. I should have dual paint and shaded it, and I mean the judges even later they were like, why did you do that? Like that's insanity. Um, yeah, I mean, so I wish there's things I wish I had done different. One thing I thought was cool, and no one ever gets to see these in the photos and stuff like that. But actually, on the back of that piece, if you if you get to look at the back of that, I have written on there that song that the dwarves sing. about like over Misty Mountains.
Yes.
And
Far
so
over the Misty Mount. Yeah, exactly.
yeah. And so my goal with that, and I found out it ended up working, was I wanted it so anyone that looked at the back, or like with the judges, when they opened up the case and they were taking the thing out, that was on the back and they would read it. And you would immediately have that image conjured in your head of
Yep.
like that old cartoon or the movie or anything like that, and just like hear those dwarves singing in their low tones and stuff like that. And I found out later from one of the judges that that's exactly what happened.
That's awesome.
As they took it out, they read it and they're like, that is so cool.
Yeah,
So
what I hear in my head is the whole like my teeth like swords, my
yes,
claws like spears, my
yes,
tail a thunderbolt, and my breath death.
yes, yeah. I yeah, it was such a fun piece to do. Um you can kind of see in that too. Like I started experimenting with the idea of like how to do a background
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And that's where I started that was like one of the first times I actually tried to do like a background. Um and actually the reason for that was because at Crystal Brush, they take photos obviously of your pieces for the online competition and stuff like that.
Right.
But the problem is you can't really pick the background. The
Yep.
background's picked by them. And I was like, well, what if I really want to sell like this idea of it's a dark, dark place? I mean, I can't just like leave the back open. It's gonna be bright blue.
Right.
So I was like, I've gotta start painting the background so I can set the atmosphere and not let someone else change it.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of like if you have an environmental piece, like for competition, especially if it's going to be photographed. That's why I do value the background very much, right?
Yeah.
Because you, you're going to get some kind of neutral background that actually doesn't suit your moody environmental piece, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
It's easy to take it at home, like if you're doing some person lit only by their torchlight or something, right? And you take a
Right.
picture of that at home, it's great because you can just slap a black background on it, and boom, it's gonna rock, right?
Right.
But when it goes to competition, that's just gonna be in front of a bright white or bright white gray background. You're like, oh,
Yep.
okay.
That's exactly it. Yep.
All right, right on. I freaking love this one so much. All right, but now I gotta say, I think I love your first dragon more. Like this, the Smaug is great, but this. So next up, we have the How to Train Your Dragon,
Yeah.
and I gotta
I,
say, this is the first piece I ever saw from you that I think like that just floored me. Like
I
I saw this in the case when you brought it, and I was just like, holy, you know what I mean? Like this, I mean, it was this piece, man. I I'll let you get into it, but I can't even like. There is so much going on here and so much to discover, and I love everything about the movement of it, the dynamism, the way the colors of the figures are interacting, like the action on things like his wings and on his scale on the back of the rock, like the detail in the waves, just everything, top to bottom.
That's great. Thank you. Um, yeah. So okay. So this is the piece. This is I agree with you. This one's better than Smog. I mean, I like Smog, but this one is a better piece. It was better done. Okay. So here's the story with this one. Um, when I first got Gorfang from Carol Rudick, it was like the summer or something like that.
Hmm.
And I also happened to get a Morgana Le Fay piece during the summer too. And this is before I've ever gone to any crystal brush competitions. This is going to be the first one coming up for me. And I'm like, I really want to do something cool. I want to do something unique. I want to try to make like a statement. I want people to be like, wow, so I'm like, I'm gonna do this thing with Gorfang, and I'm gonna put him in a swamp, and there's gonna be all these swamp trees, and there's gonna be this boat with like this person coming up there to make a sacrifice to the great swamp dragon and stuff like that. And then like, okay, I'm gonna take Morgana Le Fay, and I'm gonna paint her up so she looks like this druid, and has all these trees and leaves around her and vines and stuff like that. And that was the plan for both of them. And that's probably what would have happened if I didn't have to study for my pediatric boards. I had to study and here's the thing, when you take your boards and everything, it's a half day test. but you have to cover an immense amount of information. So like literally it's one of the things you study every day after work for a couple of hours for months before you take that exam.
Right.
And so during that period of time, those models sat on my desk. Sometimes at night, I'd go pick them up, turn them around, think about what I wanted to do with them, and then put them down, realize I got no time to do this. So I took my boards, got them all done, and I'm picking up both those models. And I'm like, that is around the time I saw Roman do that piece where it's like David and Goliath. With the
Yeah. Oh,
Goliath
yeah,
is
yeah.
yeah, and where he took two totally different scale models and mashed them together. Like that's a really cool idea. And so I literally picked the two of them up, and I was like, could I mash these two together? I think I can. I think I could build this scene, and and that's when and my kids were really into like How to Train Your Dragon at that point. And I was like, yeah, I could do a like How to Train Your Dragon thing. I think this is a cool idea. I literally messaged some friends and stuff like that. I was like, do you think this is something like is it a real cool idea? Is it something viable? And they're like, yeah, I think you should do it. So earlier I was talking about you need to be fearless. Like it pays off so much. Don't if you paint something and you're fearless and it doesn't come out, that's okay. There's going to be another piece. There's another competition. There's another time to show something off.
Right.
But the knowledge and the freedom and the uniqueness you can get, I mean, you can't get that otherwise. So I totally lost my fear when I took a $300 dragon miniature from Carol Rudick and cut it into multiple pieces and basically looked at all the pieces before me and realized there's no freaking way I can ever put this thing back together, and I may have just ruined a $300 model. Once you hit that point, you're like fearless.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
like,
There's
whatever.
nowhere to go but forward because we can't
There's
go
nowhere to
back.
go. You got it. And so yeah, I started building it. I had I got a lot of input from like Dallas, from Matt, during that time about it. I got a lot of input actually from Jay Martin too. During
Oh,
that
yeah,
time he
sure.
was yeah, like working on colors, desaturating this and stuff like that. Um, I can honestly say, so when I went to that crystal brush, I was like, okay, I think this thing's cool. I think some people will take notice. Um, People would come up to me like, that is really cool. I like how you did it. It floored me, the response to it. Like honestly the I love that piece. But one of the reasons I probably love it the most is because that was the first time I really was like, holy crap, I might actually be a miniature artist. I might not just be a painter.
Sure.
I might actually have a clue as to what I'm doing. So yeah, so that piece just always has a special place in my heart.
It's fantastic. All right. So next up, we have another like what you have a really great talent for is seeing something in a miniature. Like we talked about in that previous piece, you saying like, "Oh, can I put these two together and create this new thing?" You did it certainly with the bust piece, right? This is another
Yeah.
great example because this is actually like Boudica, right? That's the base
Yes.
bust here, the Celtic queen, warrior queen, right? But obviously,
Uh,
you have reimagined her in just a completely different way, to the point
yeah.
where like obviously it's a totally different figure. So walk us through this bust because again, this is such a great like this is seeing what's not there in a way that I think
Yeah.
is really impressive.
I think I kind of think that goes back to that fearless thing. I mean, just pick up a miniature, be willing to change it, do different things with it. The original inspiration for that was from a piece of 2D art done by a guy named Danny Diaz. He did this whole entire like series of sketches called Shamans and stuff like that. I mean, it's so cool. He's got these weird shamans. I mean, he's literally got like this ocean druid that has a octopus familiar on his shoulder, and he has like the giant kind of wizard's hat, but
Yep.
the wizard's hat is actually a giant conch shell. Um, or like another one I really loved that he did was he did this one called the Tech Wizard, and it looks like this kind of chubby kid in a post-apocalyptic setting. He's wearing a giant welding mask, and the staff he carries around, like his magic staff, is a old-fashioned bulb TV screen put on the end of the staff, and it's wired to a car battery.
That's
You know,
awesome.
Yeah, and so he had a piece in there that was like there was this forest druid lady, and it was like she had the horns. It was kind of like this gnarled wood. She had this like cloak of leaves and stuff like that. And I was like, my God, that's so cool. I want to do something like that. And yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I looked at and I was like, I can do that. I can put horns on her. I can swap out that spear, make it a staff. And then, the biggest problem was really trying to figure out how to do the leaf cloak.
Yep.
And actually, what I ended up figuring out for that was taking very very thin plastic card and just hole punching it with like those leaf punches you can get for scrapbooks,
Oh yeah,
and then
sure.
just
Yep.
layering them in to be the cloak itself.
I have also
And
stolen those from my wife on occasion because she does like the stamping and scrapbooking stuff. And I was like, "What are all these stamps?" And I looked, I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
hello."
yeah. No, I mean, the composition class I taught at Adepticon, that was one of the things we went over is try just every day looking at things and trying to reimagine maybe what they could be. What can you do with this like little bit? Can you change it to be something else? Can it be like a gear? Can it be like a cylinder? Can you change it into like like a background or stuff like that? And once you start exercising your brain like that, it gets easier and easier and easier.
Right. One of the things I really love about this piece, again, you've got you use magenta really well, right? So magenta is a
It,
fascinating color because it can be warm or cold. It's such an
yes.
eye-catching color. It's such a great sort of, it's like the allspice of miniature painting.
Yeah.
But you
My
use it you use it really well in a lot of pieces. I like
Thanks.
its use here, and I really like the way you're playing with warm tones
Uh-huh.
throughout this thing. And I talk a lot with people about interference colors. Like this is one of the things I talk about. Like think about the other tones that should be hidden in your colors that add depth. And her face is such a good example of that. The stone is such a good example of that, right? Where her face is green, right? Like
Mhm.
she's green. She's got green skin. Like if I just showed it to somebody and said, "What color's her skin?" they'd say green. Yeah, and that's
Great. Yeah.
correct. But of course, there's so much more going on there because you have these wonderful, it's a very warm green tone, and you can see the yellow of the sunlight and feel that. But you can also get this sense of like the red and the orange, her
Yeah.
freckles, but also in the glazes and the soft colors you've added, especially on the shadow side of her face where her hair is kind of coming down. You kind of feel that warmth bleed in from the reflection of her satin hair, right?
Right.
It's just such a great minimal touch, but it adds such incredible life to her.
Yeah. Yeah. She's one of my favorites. I sometimes take her out of the cabinet and just look at her.
Yeah, sure.
I was like, yeah. Um, but yeah, you were mentioning like magenta and that. So yeah, magenta and turquoise are like my wheelhouse. Like, I mean, those are my favorite colors. And that my wife constantly picks at me. She's like, "Oh, so you're painting turquoise again, or you're painting magenta again? I mean, don't you think you should use some other colors?" I'm like, "These are good. I like
No,
this."
these are the ones I like. That's funny.
Right.
Yeah. No, those are also two of my favorite colors, and I do have to like actively get myself out of using them often. So
Yeah.
I
I
get
mean,
it.
part of the point of maybe folks have seen and stuff like that, but like one of the pieces I'm working on right now is like these pair of squigs, in the caverns and stuff like that. Um, Part of the reason the squigs are yellow is because I'm like, yeah, I don't really use yellow. Maybe I should learn how to use yellow. And so, I mean, that's part of the reason why their skin is yellow. It's really just because I'm like, I'm not used to this color. Let's try something different.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I every time I paint Space Marines, forced myself to paint some Imperial Fist Space Marines because they're
Uh,
all yellow, and I'm like, okay, this forces me to get like it because there's an established sort of color scheme, right? I have to
right.
break my habits. So, yep.
Yep.
All right. So next up we have Brave, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought we'd include this piece just to try to show, like I said, looking at things and seeing what they can become. I mean,
Yep.
this isn't even a miniature, right? I mean, this is actually the game piece for that Disney Infinity game or whatever, like the ones you
Yeah.
used to put on the console. That's what she is.
And this was a
And
challenge, right? This was part of yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so this kind of just goes back to my my desire to usually try to do something different, see what story you can tell, how can I manipulate this or make this different, stuff like that. So yeah, this was the massive voodoo challenge a couple of
There
years
you go.
ago.
Yep.
And so I was like, looking at it and I was like, yeah, I really want to do Merida. She's cool. And so I came up with this idea. I was like, what if everything didn't always end up being, I mean, right, always in the Disney movies everyone's happy at the end. I mean, well, not the bad guys, but the good guys are always happy at the end, everything's fine, the princess is saved, whatever type thing. I was like, so what if Merida hadn't been successful? What if instead the demon bear killed dad, mom never got changed back, all those type of stuff? So that's when she started getting converted into this other version of Merida, this demon bear hunter. And so, like, instead of the wispy and the blue that they were like in the movie, they've turned to this like magenta and stuff like that because they're anger and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what led to that piece. I was fortunate enough. I submitted it, and I was actually fortunate enough that it won the massive voodoo competition, and so it holds a special place in my heart because, like, I know that Roman himself looked at it and he was like, "This is cool."
Yeah.
And I mean, like, as far as like idols go and stuff like that, I mean, it's people who do things that are different and unique, like what Roman has done in the past and continues to do, like, with, like we had talked about Last Light or David and Goliath and stuff like that. I mean, to have your idol be like, "This is cool,"
Yeah,
means
that's an amazing
it's
thing.
an amazing feeling. Yeah.
No doubt. All right. So then let's see here. Okay, then that brings us to the last piece, which is the bust of our snowy goat fellow here.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a really old piece for it's not that old. It's like 5 years, 6 years old, something like that. It was one of the first pieces I took to Adept or to Gen Con. Um, and the reason I like it, the reason it holds a special place for me, is because it was one of the first busts I did. It was my first time kind of experimenting with doing different things with skin and just I don't know, just the textures in it, the background, taking that piece of corkboard and putting that on there so I could try to make it feel like he was in the mountains and stuff like that. It was that first time, I guess, of kind of just branching out and trying new things and not necessarily worrying about what the outcome would be.
Right.
So
No, it's awesome. I actually remember when I saw this in the case back in Gen Con, but I didn't know it was you at the time. I just
I
remember liking it.
yeah, I'm willing to bet that's probably, I would think that Gen Con's about the time you and I first met.
I think
It's probably
so.
right around that Gen Con.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. So let's go back over here.
Okay,
Amazing pieces, buddy. Absolutely great.
thank
So
you.
now we're going to do some questions. I've got some
Okay,
questions for Chris. Uh, if you have some questions, drop them in the Q&A, folks. Like somewhere over here on one of these sides of the screen, there's a place where you can ask a question. So if anybody has any, feel free to drop them. But I've got questions for you. So you've already answered one of my questions, which is
okay.
what is your favorite color to paint with? And so we already know
It's
that's magenta and turquoise. So
and
there you go.
turquoise. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right
Easily,
on.
it's magenta and turquoise. And right now, I've got a real thing for the magenta and the turquoise from Chimera Colors. Like that. Those are two beautiful colors they make.
It is a paint set I really want to get my hands on. I have not picked up the
You,
Chimera yet because I've been playing around with. I've actually been playing around with the scale, like artist acrylics, like their HBA
I
equivalents recently. Yeah.
Yeah, I just got those too. I've been playing with them. To be quite honest, for me, there's a lot of similarities, but I would say I feel like the Chimera ones flow a little bit better
Okay.
for me. Yeah, I mean they just seem to be a tad bit smoother in my opinion.
Nice. I'm interested to check them out. I was just kind of waiting. Every time they come in stock, they're gone before I realize they're back in
Oh yeah,
stock. All
yeah,
right.
yeah. They disappear quick.
It's true. It's true. All right. So let's go with some other questions here.
Okay.
Uh, what do you listen to while you're painting? Like, do you have something on in the background? Do you podcast? What do you do?
Oh, um, sometimes I listen to podcast. Um, Most of the time I try to listen to music.
Okay.
I think so when I listen to podcast, I mean that's fine. But for some reason I swear I paint better when I actually listen to music. Like I feel like maybe it turns on something in the brain, like the
Mm-hmm.
artistic flow or something. So I really enjoy like alternative rock. Both like, the 80s, the 90s and stuff like that. I mean, I'm a 90s kid. So I mean there's a lot of Foo Fighters, Weezer, Nirvana, um, uh,
Basically, like the
Soundgarden,
Sirius
stuff like
XM
that.
channel Lithium, just like
You
that's
got
your
it.
that's your go-to. I
Lith-
get it.
Lithium is my go-to. Yeah, lithium is my go-to.
Hey, we're in the same boat there, brother. You don't have to you don't have to explain that. That is, I'm right on with that channel. Okay, rock and roll. Do you ever make a playlist for a particular project?
I can't say I've made a playlist for a particular project, but there are definitely certain songs that get associated with projects.
Yep.
Um, like for instance, the Valkyrie. I would listen to ACDC Thunderstruck again and again and
Nice.
again.
Nice.
Um, and actually, ironically, for the Fate piece, um, there is on YouTube a song on there called Yggdrasil by like some Celtic group or something like that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't even think it's in English. It's just more of this like dirge type song.
Sure.
I would listen to that on repeat again and again as I that piece. I actually even tried to put that music in Yggdrasil before I presented it. Like it had this like little sound system type thing that
Nice.
it was gonna try to play it. But once I got to Adepticon, I realized that trying to make it play all the background noise just drowned it
Right.
out and it
Right.
was kind of a pain in the butt, so it just got put by the wayside. But yeah, I mean definitely certain pieces have certain songs that go with them.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. There's a great piece for like those kind of Norse miniatures when painting Buddha when Ben did
Oh, the
the
Shield Maiden.
the Shield Maiden. Yes.
Yeah.
That song that they open with, I went and grabbed
Yes.
that song immediately because I was like, "Oh my god, this is like the perfect Norse painting song right here."
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Or like honestly, like lately too on my iPod, every once in a while the Pirates of the Caribbean Black Pearl song comes
Yeah,
on.
yeah, that's such a
Yeah,
good song. A lot of
it
D&D
is.
hours have passed with that song.
Yes. And I know it sounds dumb, but I almost want to try to figure out a piece to build just because of that song. I'm like, I want to paint a pirate piece just because I keep listening to that song. I don't even know what the pirate piece would be. I have no concept. But I'm just like, I almost want to build a piece just because of the song.
Nice. I don't think there is anything wrong with that whatsoever. All right. Let's see. All right. Next question. Who's your favorite current miniature painter? Obviously, besides yourself.
I can only pick one.
You can only pick one. That's why this is a hard question. Because obviously the answer would be we'd sit here for the next 10 minutes and name all the
Yeah.
amazing artists that we know that are out there, right? But if you had to pick one, what would the one be?
Uh, I think the one, because even though he probably has no idea or anything like that, the one that probably made the biggest impact on me in my first few years of painting would be Roman. I mean, that was when Massive Voodoo was churning out tons of articles. He and Raph were on there all the time, doing something different, doing something unique. And even though at that point I wasn't necessarily, I was still just doing like Troll Bloods and just trying to paint them nice and go to P3 competitions.
Yep.
That groundwork started getting laid into my head, and yeah, honestly, I don't know if I would do some of the things I do if it wasn't for those guys. So
I think that is a fantastic answer because he's also just an absolute hero, an inspiration, an endless font of positivity. When you meet him, right,
yes,
he's just the nicest person.
I
So yeah,
I have never had the pleasure of actually getting to meet him. I'm so desperate to want to do it at some point.
Oh man, we have
So
got to get you to Nova. That's the answer. I think he's actually not
I
not here this year, which is ironic. But like
yeah
2020, you better mark your calendar right now, Chris. I'm just
I
telling you. We're getting
I
you to
need
Nova. Like plot it out. It's happening.
I you're right. I need to go to Nova. I mean, there's not only would you be there, but there's I mean Sam's been there the last couple of years. He's always fun to hang out with. And then like my funnies, my funnies, my friends like Devoni and Eric are out
Yeah, yeah.
there and they're great. You know,
Yep.
and yeah. So and I kind of think that with Crystal Brush having being out of Adepticon now, Nova is likely going to start becoming the more I guess for lack of a better way of putting it, artistic miniature scene
Sure.
where it's not going to be, like I'm very excited for Golden Demon, and I think it's going to be great. But one of the downsides, I guess, is that you do have to use like Game Workshop miniatures, right? I mean, it's not
Sure.
like you can't build something else, so it is a little bit of a limitation. But something like Nova is probably going to be the new. This is just wide open. You can
Yep.
build whatever you want type thing,
And
and that kind of appeals to me.
and it's just growing like gangbusters. It's
Oh,
such
it
a
is.
positive competition too. Like
Yeah,
I really, buddy, I can't wait to have you out there because yes, it is just like it's exactly what I talked about with just it is a your hand will hurt after the weekend from high five and everybody for all the amazing work. Like it's the number of pieces there grows every year. They did a wonderful expansion last year by adding an apprentice, a journeyman, and a master category. So you just saw a
yeah,
lot of younger artists stepping up and getting in confidently and feeling that recognition of like they are absolutely at a great place in their journey. They have a clear path forward. It was awesome to see them compete. So just like I'm blown away by what they're doing at that competition. I think it's just going up. I mean,
oh,
that's
I think
Roman
so
and
too.
Dave and Matt and this year Sam is joining them. So it's
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
great scene.
yeah. I totally agree. I think that's going to start being the big go to for America. So,
Yep. All right. Okay, next question. Uh do you lick your brushes, and if yes, what paint tastes the best?
um, absolutely lick them. It's a bad habit,
Yep.
but I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Saliva is a great like
It does the job.
it does a job. Yeah, yeah, and it helps keep the point on the brushes. I don't know which one I think tastes best. Um, Definitely the Schmika Titanium White is not good.
No, that's terrible. Don't do that. That
That's
is
terrible. It's happened before, and I'm like, why is my tongue like tingling? I was like,
Oh,
oh,
that's because I'm giving myself
uh,
heavy metal poisoning. Yeah.
yeah. It's like that's not good. Yeah. Um, but yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I mean, the whatever one's your favorite color, I
Yeah,
guess.
exactly. I think there is a thing about that where like the colors I like do taste better. I
Yeah.
don't know I don't know what that is. I don't know
I
why
mean,
that is.
they mean and people say you eat with your eyes first, right? So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
that's it. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Let's see. Okay. Last question.
Okay.
Uh do you have like a favorite type of miniature to paint? You paint a lot of different stuff, as we just saw. Is there anything, and when I say type, you can construe that however you like, however you would categorize. Is there anything that you categorize as like your favorite type of miniature to paint?
Hmm. I guess I could break it down two ways. I
Okay.
would 75 millimeter. I like bigger things.
Yep.
I feel like it gives you more surface to work on, put more details in, do different things. Um, yeah, so the bigger the model, at least up to a certain extent, the better. And outside of that, I love dragons and angels. So
My friend, we are simpatico. Brothers from another mother. Let me tell you
that's
what.
right.
Same colors. All of my like again, people don't see it, but like all of the backgrounds on my computers are just rotating through various angel art. Like that's all it is. And it's just like so I get it 100%. All right, well Chris, that brings us to the end there, buddy. Hey, absolute
Okay.
pleasure hanging out with you, man. It has been
I,
great.
no, it's been wonderful. Thank you, Vince. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I will put links down to Chris's Instagram and all of his of various social media. So you can check that out down below. Give him a follow. Watch what he's working on. That new Squig piece is absolutely amazing. Working on the Manglers coming out of a cave. Can't wait to see that finished and in person at GD next year. But for all of you out there watching, we thank you very much. We always, as always, appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.